Louis Francis Albert Victor Nicholas Mountbatten, 1st Earl Mountbatten of Burma, was one of the most influential figures in 20th century Britain. A military leader, statesman, and prominent member of the British nobility, he was a direct descendant of Queen Victoria and formed part of the inner circle of the royal family. He also played a decisive role in the life of the young Prince Charles, whom he guided and supported as a mentor. During the Second World War, he rose to the highest naval commands, and in 1947 he was appointed the last Viceroy of British India, entrusted with the complex task of overseeing the independence and partition of the subcontinent. His public career placed him at the center of some of the most decisive events of his time, whilst his private life was marked by controversial episodes that continue to generate debate today. Before we begin, we invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell, as we regularly upload historical content that will interest you. Without further ado, let us begin. Louis Mountbatten was born on the 25th of June 1900 at Frogmore House, Windsor, into an aristocratic family closely connected to the royal household. He was the son of Prince Louis of Battenberg, later Marquess of Milford Haven, and Princess Victoria of Hesse and by Rhine, and great-grandson of Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom. During his childhood, he was educated at home and later at elite institutions, before entering the Royal Naval College, Osborne, in 1913 to train as a naval officer. During the First World War, he served as a midshipman on board the cruiser HMS Lion from 1916, and later on the battleship HMS Queen Elizabeth, taking part in naval operations towards the end of the conflict. In 1917, in the midst of a surge of anti-German sentiment in Britain, his family adopted the anglicized surname Mountbatten in place of Battenberg, in line with the dynastic change to Windsor decreed by King George V. After the war, Mountbatten continued his academic studies in engineering at the University of Cambridge before resuming his naval career. In 1920, now a young lieutenant in the Royal Navy, he was assigned to the battlecruiser HMS Renown and accompanied the Prince of Wales, Edward, the future King Edward VIII, on official visits to Australia, India, and Japan. That extensive journey forged a close friendship between the two, further consolidating Mountbatten's place within the inner circle of the British royal family. On the 18th of July, 1922, he married Edwina Ashley, a British aristocrat and granddaughter of the magnate Sir Ernest Cassel, heir to a vast fortune. The wedding, held in London, became one of the most notable social events of the year, attended by the elite and by numerous members of royalty. After the ceremony, the couple embarked on a luxurious honeymoon that took them through several European courts and to the United States. The marriage produced 2 daughters, Patricia, born in 1924, and Pamela, born in 1929. However, despite its initial brilliance and the intense social life they led, their marital relationship would, in time, diverge considerably from traditional expectations. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Mountbatten continued to rise through the ranks of the Royal Navy. In 1932, he achieved the rank of captain and deepened his technical training, showing a marked interest in naval communications and emerging electronic technology. Parallel to his military career, the private life of Lord Mountbatten and his wife Edwina took an unconventional turn for their era. Edwina, a charismatic figure of London high society, began to feel increasing dissatisfaction in her marriage shortly after the birth of their first daughter in 1924. That same year, she embarked on her first extramarital affair, a development that triggered a crisis within the couple. Louis, deeply in love but traditional in temperament, was initially devastated upon learning of his wife's infidelity, as their daughter Pamela would later recall. However, determined to avoid divorce, which terrified him due to its potential social and professional consequences, Mountbatten agreed to reach an understanding with Edwina. Over time, their marriage evolved into a discreet, open relationship, in which both maintained separate romances without breaking public appearances. This arrangement, unusual within their social milieu, preserved their union and projected an image of a glamorous and enviable couple, even though beneath the surface they led largely independent emotional lives. Throughout the 1930s, Edwina Mountbatten accumulated a succession of notable lovers, generating persistent murmurs in the tabloid press of the period. It was even reported that the Countess was involved with such prominent public figures as the African-American singer Paul Robeson, something considered scandalous in the Britain of the time, given its prevailing social prejudices. She was also linked to the Caribbean musician Leslie Hutchinson, and later to a close friendship with the Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru. Some newspapers hinted at these affairs. In 1932, a columnist alluded to the relationship of a society lady with a colored man, an indirect reference to Edwina. Such reports forced the royal household to intervene and prompted the Mountbattens to take legal action to suppress the scandal. For his part, Lord Mountbatten was not immune to extramarital relationships. Within private circles, his discreet liaisons with aristocratic women were well known, including the young Margaret Wigham, later Duchess of Argyll, and the French socialite Yola Letellier. At the same time, more veiled rumors suggested that Dickie, as he was known to those close to him, also felt attraction towards certain young men, although any indication of bisexuality was carefully suppressed in an era when such acts were punishable by law. Years later, Lord Mountbatten himself summed up this particular dynamic with a candid remark: "We spent our married life getting into other people's beds." With this open acknowledgement of their mutual adventures, the couple confirmed what high society already suspected. Their union was built upon an unconventional understanding designed to withstand the ongoing romantic diversions of both spouses. The outbreak of the Second World War found Mountbatten ready to assume major naval responsibilities. At the start of the conflict, as a captain, he was given command of the destroyer HMS Kelly, flagship of his flotilla. Aboard the Kelly, he took part in intense naval operations until the ship was torpedoed and sunk during the evacuation of Crete in May 1941. Despite the loss of the Kelly, his bravery and leadership caught the attention of Prime Minister Winston Churchill, who in October 1941 appointed him Chief of Combined Operations, entrusting him with the preliminary planning for the future Allied invasion of Western Europe. In that role, Mountbatten coordinated elite commando units and directed amphibious landing exercises, preparing British forces for the eventual Normandy operation. He rose rapidly in rank over the course of a few weeks to match his new strategic responsibilities. In 1943, at only 42 years of age, Louis Mountbatten was appointed Supreme Allied Commander, Southeast Asia. This appointment, supported by his cousin King George VI, made him one of the youngest commanders to hold such a multinational supreme post during the war. At the head of the Southeast Asia Command, Mountbatten directed the campaign against Japanese forces in Burma and Malaya. Under his leadership, British and Allied troops succeeded in halting the Japanese advance and ultimately recapturing Burma and the strategic base of Singapore in 1945. These victories helped hasten Japan's surrender in the Asian theater, consolidating Mountbatten's reputation as an effective military leader. By the end of the conflict, now holding the rank of admiral, he was celebrated in Britain as a war hero, admired both for his naval service and his personal charisma. With the arrival of peace, British Prime Minister Clement Attlee called upon Mountbatten for a political mission of enormous historical magnitude, supervising the independence of British India. In February 1947, Mountbatten was appointed the last Viceroy of India, tasked with overseeing the transition from British rule to self-government within an accelerated time frame. At 46, the Admiral accepted this diplomatic challenge and arrived in New Delhi in March 1947. In marathon meetings with Indian nationalist leaders, Mountbatten negotiated the terms for ending colonial rule. Working against the clock, he decided to bring forward the date of independence, initially planned for 1948 to 15th August 1947. At midnight, the jewel in the crown of the British Empire was divided into two sovereign nations, India and Pakistan, ending nearly 2 centuries of colonial Raj. Although the petition was accompanied by violent sectarian unrest, Mountbatten fulfilled his mandate to transfer power in record time, earning the respect of the Indian leader Nehru, who invited him to remain as the first Governor-General of independent India. Lord Mountbatten held that ceremonial office from August 1947 to June 1948, serving as a bridge between the newly formed republic and the British monarchy. Mountbatten's role in independence was complex. On the one hand, he received praise for his decisiveness and for the good personal relationship he cultivated with leaders such as Nehru. On the other, some historians have criticized him for the haste of the partition, which may have exacerbated communal violence. Within the family sphere, his wife Edwina also left her mark during this period. As vicereine, Edwina devoted herself to humanitarian work, assisting refugees of the partition, and she forged close ties with Jawaharlal Nehru. The closeness between Edwina and the Indian Prime Minister was so profound that speculation arose regarding a possible romantic relationship, although her daughter Pamela insisted that it was primarily an intimate friendship built on exceptional mutual trust. What is certain is that Edwina and Nehru maintained a prolific correspondence even after the Mountbatten's departure from India, and remained close friends until Edwina's premature death in 1960. On 21st June 1948, once the transition had been completed, Louis and Edwina Mountbatten left India amid expressions of gratitude. At their farewell ceremony, Indian leaders praised their service and paid them honors as they sailed out of Bombay. Thus closed the final chapter of the British Empire in the subcontinent, with Mountbatten as a privileged witness to that historic moment. With his experience as an imperial statesman, Mountbatten returned to the United Kingdom and resumed his naval career. He was appointed commander of the Mediterranean Fleet of the Royal Navy from 1952 to 1954, and later promoted to First Sea Lord, Chief of the Naval Staff, from 1955 to 1959. In 1956, he attained the highest naval rank, Admiral of the Fleet. He subsequently served as Chief of the Defense Staff from 1959 to 1965, becoming the government's principal military advisor. During these years, he received numerous honors, including the Order of the Garter and other high distinctions. After retiring from active service in 1965, Lord Mountbatten did not withdraw from public life. He assumed honorary posts such as Governor of the Isle of Wight and devoted time to his many hobbies, which ranged from recreational sailing to radio technology. At the same time, Mountbatten strengthened his role as a patriarchal figure within the royal family. As early as the 1940s, he had influenced the dynasty by encouraging the courtship between his nephew, Prince Philip of Greece, and Denmark, and the then heir Princess Elizabeth, the future Elizabeth II. In fact, it was Mountbatten who in 1939 facilitated the celebrated meeting at Dartmouth between Philip and Elizabeth, planting the seed of a romance that would culminate in a royal marriage. Years later, once Philip of Edinburgh and the young Queen had established their family, Mountbatten became a close advisor to the sovereign, especially in the early years of her reign. His influence would be even more notable with the next generation. Prince Charles, Mountbatten's great-nephew and heir to the throne, found in Uncle Dickie the grandfather he had scarcely known. Charles called him his honorary grandfather, and Mountbatten guided him in personal matters and in his military formation. By the mid-1970s, Lord Mountbatten even attempted to orchestrate Charles's future marriage by suggesting that he should take as his wife Mountbatten's own granddaughter, Amanda Knatchbull, in an effort to bind his family yet more closely to the House of Windsor. Although the plan did not succeed, it reflects the great confidence the prince placed in Mountbatten's counsel, regarding him as a paternal figure. On a personal level, following Edwina's death in 1960, from a stroke during a humanitarian tour in Asia, Lord Mountbatten continued his life as a widower, devoted to public service and to his family. He maintained a close relationship with his daughters, Patricia and Pamela, and delighted in his grandchildren, whom he would often take on summer holidays to the Irish coast, never imagining the tragedy that would one day occur there. In the summer of 1979, at the age of 79, Lord Mountbatten prepared to spend a quiet holiday at Classiebawn Castle, his summer residence in the small village of Mullaghmore on Ireland's northwest coast. Despite the latent danger, Mullaghmore lay a mere 19 kilometres from the Northern Irish border during a period of intense activity by the Irish Republican Army. Mountbatten was reluctant to give up his customary seaside retreat. On the morning of 27 August 1979, he went out to fish for lobsters with several family members aboard his small boat, Shadow, disregarding warnings from the Irish police about possible attacks. Tragically, members of the Provisional Irish Republican Army had succeeded in evading nighttime surveillance. The terrorist Thomas McMahon planted a powerful 23-kilogram bomb on the boat while it was moored. A few hundred meters from the shore, the explosive was detonated by remote control, destroying the vessel within seconds. Local fishermen rushed to the rescue. They found Lord Mountbatten gravely injured among the floating wreckage and brought him ashore, but his wounds proved fatal. Lewis Mountbatten was pronounced dead before reaching the hospital, the victim of an act of political violence that shocked the United Kingdom. The explosion claimed other lives besides that of the elderly Earl. Also on board were his elder daughter, Lady Patricia Knatchbull, her husband Lord Brabourne, and their 14-year-old twin sons, Nicholas and Timothy, together with Patricia's elderly mother-in-law, Doreen Knatchbull, and a 15-year-old local helper, Paul Maxwell. The blast killed young Nicholas and Paul instantly and inflicted severe injuries on the others. Doreen, aged 83, died the following day from her wounds. That same day, the IRA carried out another deadly ambush against British soldiers in Warren Point, Northern Ireland, killing 18 servicemen. Mountbatten's assassination was a devastating blow to the British royal family. Prince Charles lost his most beloved mentor, Queen Elizabeth II mourned the death of a trusted advisor, and the Duke of Edinburgh lost his maternal uncle and fraternal figure. Days later, on the 5th of September 1979, a state funeral was held for Lord Mountbatten at Westminster Abbey, attended by the Queen, the entire royal family and international dignitaries. His remains were laid to rest in Romsey Abbey, Hampshire, after a ceremony highlighting his decades of service to the Crown. Years later, in a gesture of reconciliation, Irish leaders expressed regret for the attack, acknowledging the pain caused to the Mountbatten family. But in 1979, that act of terrorism marked a tragic end to the life of one of the most influential figures in modern British history. After Lord Mountbatten's death, his public image, long that of a respected war hero and venerable statesman, became shadowed by controversies that emerged over the ensuing decades. In 2019, coinciding with the 40th anniversary of his assassination, newly released FBI files and testimonies compiled by the historian Andrew Lowney revealed sordid aspects of Mountbatten's private life. According to these declassified documents, intelligence services had investigated for years Lord Mountbatten's perverse attraction to young teenage boys. In one report, dated 1944, Baroness Dishes, an aristocrat close to the royal family, warned that Lewis Mountbatten was known to be a homosexual with a perversion for young boys, which in her view rendered him unfit for high military office. Other testimonies gathered in the investigation suggest that Mountbatten, during his naval postings, frequented clandestine circles of the gay subculture. His former chauffeur in Malta confirmed that the admiral often visited a homosexual brothel frequented by naval officers in 1948. Likewise, one man interviewed claimed to have been Mountbatten's lover in the 1970s, providing details about his alleged preferences, including a fetish for young men in uniform, and revealing that in certain circles he was mockingly nicknamed Mount Bottom. Indeed, the federal files also documented Lady Mountbatten's extramarital affairs, confirming her liaisons with singers Paul Robeson and Leslie Hutchinson, among others, and indicating that the FBI monitored the couple closely, deeming them persons of extremely low morals by the standards of the time. Even more grave were the direct allegations of child abuse that implicated Mountbatten decades after his death, retrospectively tarnishing his legacy. In 2019, some victims connected to earlier scandals in Northern Ireland began to identify the late Lord as a participant in acts of paedophilia said to have occurred in the 1970s. Finally, in October 2022, a man named Arthur Smith, aged 56, waived his anonymity to state publicly that when he was a child of 11, he suffered sexual abuse at the hands of Lewis Mountbatten. According to his sworn testimony before a Belfast court, Smith was living in 1977 at Kincora, a children's home in Northern Ireland infamously associated with a child exploitation network. When the administrator of the place, William McGrath, later convicted as a paedophile, introduced him to a luxury visitor who abused him on at least 2 occasions. That visitor, the victim asserts, was Lord Mountbatten. This allegation has led the Northern Irish justice system more than 4 decades later to examine for the first time Mountbatten's possible involvement in sexual offences. It should be noted that the aristocrat's name had already arisen in earlier journalistic investigations into Kincora, although he was never formally charged. The British royal household, for its part, has refrained from commenting on these posthumous accusations. Nevertheless, the mere possibility that a national hero might have been involved in the exploitation of minors proved shocking to public opinion, forcing a critical reassessment of Mountbatten's figure beyond his official achievements. Lord Lewis Mountbatten left an indelible mark on the history of the 20th century. In life, he was praised as a gentleman of the old school, a brilliant admiral and strategist who contributed to the Allied victory in the Second World War, and a bold diplomat who steered the end of the British Empire in Asia. His closeness to the royal family shaped the course of the British monarchy, from facilitating the courtship of the young Elizabeth II with Prince Philip to serving as mentor and honorary grandfather to Prince Charles, influencing at least 4 generations of the House of Windsor. However, Mountbatten's legacy also has a darker side. The revelations about his open marriage and his bisexuality, unthinkable to air publicly during his lifetime, and the accusations of child sexual abuse that emerged after his death have cast shadows over his reputation, obliging us to confront the moral complexity of his figure. Today, Louis Mountbatten is remembered with respect for his military and state contributions, while also being examined with the critical gaze that previously concealed intimate truths now permit. His life, full of contrasts between public duty and private excesses, embodies the light and shadow of the aristocracy at the imperial British twilight, and remains a subject of study and reflection in contemporary historical memory.